right, we are here in the last module before the test for chapters 1 through 3. This one's going to be quick because there's only 2 sections, and the reason for that is because there's a test at the end, and so I didn't want to bog you down with too much new stuff. I just wanted to kind of get the last few sections in, and then you can look at the test. So this should be a pretty short video, especially compared to my last few. So let me get this screen shared for you, and we can pick up where we left off. So we have 3.4, multiplying and dividing integers, and then also variable expressions with integers. So to multiply and divide, I kind of hinted at this in the last video, but I didn't give you a formal explanation. And so if you have, this is the same for multiplication and division. So if you have the same sign, the answer is going to be positive. If you have opposite sign, the answer is going to be negative. So here we have 9 times 4. That is just 36. Both of them are positive, so the answer is positive. For B, we have negative 8 times 5. So 8 times 5 is 40. And since there's one negative, we're going to have a negative 40. C, negative 7 times 11. We have one negative, so we get negative 77. For D, we have 6 times 10. But since we have 2 negatives, that's going to give us a positive answer. I kind of wrote all over that problem, but hopefully you can see your notes. And we have 6 times 10, which gives us 60 as the answer, a positive 60. Same thing with dividing. With dividing, we have the same sign is positive. The opposite sign is negative. So here we have a positive and a negative, so the answer is going to be negative. 6 goes into 120. 20 times, so we get negative 20 as our answer. This guy, even though it's division, it's the same rules. 2 negatives will make a positive because it's the same sign. So 40 divided by, negative 40 divided by negative 5 is negative 8. So now we can really get into simplifying, not only with parentheses in here, but you'll notice there's some exponents in this section as well. Okay, so order of operations, we have to do those parentheses first. So actually, these parentheses mean multiplication. So we're going to do the multiplication in order from left to right. Negative 6 times 2 is negative 12, minus positive 5 times 9 is 45, plus 7. I'm going to change the subtraction to addition by making that a negative 45. So I can see here I have a negative 12 and a negative 45, which are added together because it's the same sign. So that gives me negative 57 plus 7. Those are opposite signs. So now I subtract 57 minus 7 is 50. And since the 57 is negative, the answer is negative. This section is, well, probably even last section. I didn't use my calculator last section, but these 2 sections, this is really where your calculator will start betraying you and giving you the wrong answers if you type the problems in wrong. So it's always good to know how to do them by hand and then check on the calculator for the steps along the way that you need help with. But don't rely too heavily on your calculator because that can lead you to some wrong answers. So here I have the opposite of 4 to the third. So that's the opposite of 4 times 4 times 4. Notice there's only one negative in this problem. There's no negatives that are associated with the fact that I'm repeating the 3 to the third power. All right, so I have 4 to the third power. 4 times 4 times 4, which is 64. And then the opposite of that is negative. So this problem becomes negative 64. Let's see. I have multiplication, I have division, I have addition, and I have exponents. So I'm going to leave this for a second and start with the exponents. 2 to the 5th power is 32. And now I'm going to do the multiplication first and the division second, because multiplication and division goes in order from left to right. So 4 times 16 is 64. Then I will divide by 8 because that comes second. And finally, there's only one more thing to do, which is add. There's actually no negatives in this problem at all, but we're just getting a little more in-depth to our order of operation problems. And now we are evaluating, and you can see here these evaluating expressions have gotten more complicated. There's multiplication, there are exponents, and so that is why we are working on it in this section. All right, as we move along through this book, so we have 3 times -2 plus 5y, 5 times -11 minus 2. So this is no different than the previous problems. Number 3 we were just doing. We just kind of have to build them ourselves by plugging in the x and the y. So I'm going to do the multiplication first. These are multiplication with one negative, they're opposite sign multiplication problems. So 3 times -2 is, oops, I almost put 5. Well, I did put 5, but I caught it. -6. 5 times -11 is -55, because there's only one negative. And then finally minus 2. So I'm going to do addition and subtraction from left to right. I have -6 plus -55. Those are the same sign. So I get -61. And then finally minus 2 becomes plus a -2, which is -63. Okay, trying that one more time. We have, now this is where, I didn't really emphasize it on the previous problem, but you really do have to be careful. Anytime you put negatives into problems, you want to use parentheses. So this becomes 2 times -4 squared plus 5 times -4 minus 7. So not only if you forget parentheses, does it kind of turn into a subtraction problem accidentally, but also if you forget parentheses, your squares and your third powers are going to get kind of wonky. So first up, I have an exponent. And I'll just do it off to the side here. 4 squared. Since the parentheses are around the -4, that means I have -4 times -4. That whole thing in parentheses is squared. And now since I have same sign multiplication, the answer turns out to be positive 16. So here we have 2 times 16, and then the rest of the problem we will do step by step. So now doing the multiplication, 2 times 16 is 32. 5 times -4 is -20. Gonna do the, I have no division, I already did the multiplication from left to right. So now I'm going to do addition and subtraction from left to right, which means this comes first because it's on the left. 30 plus -20 is -12. Oh, no, it's not. It is positive 12 because I'm adding them and I'm keeping the sign of the bigger number. Minus 7. And you can change that to subtraction if you want, but 12 minus 7 is a pretty common way of writing subtraction, so most people will get that correct. -5. All right, we are at 3.4b. So if you need to take a break, go ahead and do that here. Oh, I should put a little placard up. So here is the pause the video, purple screen. And now we are back. We are almost done. We are going to be multiplying and dividing integers in applications, which you've seen before, means word problems. Oh, look how short that is. It'll be right quick. Okay, so it says translate and simplify, like always. So translate, I'll do in blue. The quotient means, anybody? Means to divide. So we're going to do 77 and negative 11. And then part B, we have the product. So it's the only one we haven't talked about. Product means the answer to multiplication problem. So negative 11 and 12. And you can write 11 using, you can write multiplication using parentheses or the dot or however you want to write it. Okay, so now we're going to simplify. 7 divided by negative 11, since there's one negative, they're opposite signs, we're going to get a negative 7 for the answer. And finally, again, it has one negative. 11 times 12 is 121, so negative 121. Kind of looks like absolute value because I was very sloppy with that writing. I'll make my 2 bigger. 121. All right, we will pause the video and be ready for the last section of before the test. And we are back with 3.5. So here we go. We just have I guess it's a couple of, I guess there's an A and a B. I really tricked myself when I wrote this. Okay, here is A. So A says 3.2a is the subtraction addition properties with integers. So we have done these properties before. We're just doing them with positives and negatives now. So first we want to check if something is a solution. So I will plug in, first I will plug in negative 5. So I want to know, is that a solution? I'm going to put a question mark. Multiplication first, so negative 15 minus 7. Change it to addition by adding the opposite, and I see negative 5 at negative 15 and negative 7 gives me a negative 22. That does not equal 23, so the answer is no. All right, let's check the next one. 3 times 5 minus 7 equals 23. Is that true? 15 minus 7 equals 8, which does not equal 23. So the answer again is no. Finally, plugging a 10 in, 3 times 10 minus 7, does that equal 23? 30 minus 7 is 23. Equals 23. Check mark. So yes, that is the answer. This is a solution to the problem. So looking at how could we figure that out without checking for solutions, we're going to do the same thing we did back in chapter 2. So the only difference between this and chapter 2 is was it chapter 2? I already forgot. I've made too many videos in one sitting. So whatever chapter it was that we talked about this, we have done it before, but we just did it with positives. So now we're going to do it with positives and negatives. So I am going to do the opposite. I have addition, so I'm going to subtract because that gives me that 0 pair that I was talking about earlier. So I end up with x equals, since I have 2 negatives, I'm going to add those same signs, and I get x equals negative 62. C is an addition problem, but I'm adding a negative. So I want to do the opposite of that. So instead of adding a negative, I'm going to do a positive, because if I have a negative 14, what's going to cancel that out? I need to find that 0 pair. And if I have a negative 14, I need to have a positive 14. In fact, I'm even going to put the plus sign so we know we're adding to cancel those out. So I get z equals 19. And if ever you are confused and you say, am I adding or subtracting or what? Just try something. And then if you want, you can check, I'm going to check C here, 19 plus negative 14. Since they're opposites, I subtract. That equals, oh, perfect. That's exactly the answer we were. All right. So you can just plug in your answer and check it if you think that you might have done something wrong. Okay, so for B, we have minus 16. So I'm going to add 16 because we always want to do the opposite. That gives me that 0 pair that I'm looking for always. And we have y equals, since they're both positive, I will add and get 46. Now, sometimes you just get so many signs, it just gets too complicated. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to simplify this, make it a little prettier. Instead of subtracting a negative 16, I'm going to add a positive 16. So I get b plus 16 equals negative 4. Now I have done nothing to solve this problem, but I've at least cleaned it up so that I can solve it a little easier in my mind because I don't like looking at all that stuff with all those symbols. So now that I have a plus 16, I'm going to do a minus 16 on both sides, which will allow me to cancel out that 0 pair. And now I have negative 4 plus negative 6. That is an equal sign, just sloppy. And I get negative 20 for that final answer. Let's get the box around there. Okay, so that was kind of a review of 2 topics. It was new because we have never put those 2 together, but each topic by itself, the addition property as well as negative numbers, we've done both of those separately already. So now we're going to move on to a new topic, and this is our last topic. So everything we've talked about since Module 1, all of those topics will be on the chapter test. And if you go to the test review center, it's kind of like an assignment in Canvas, but it's not worth any points because it's optional to do that test review. You can click in the test review center, click on the test 1, and it will give you a review that's personalized to you based off of how effectively you're working through the homework. So if you're struggling in a particular section and that section is on the test, then that review center is going to give you some extra practice in that section. All right, last one. Since we have already done 2 properties, addition and subtraction, then we kind of have the idea of you just do the opposite in order to undo it. So here we have 4 times x. So the opposite of 4 times x is dividing by 4. Instead of multiplying by 4, we're going to divide by 4. And so we have dividing by 4 on both sides gives us x equals 7. Now remember the focus. The focus is not fractions because we have not worked on fractions yet. That's coming up in the next video, chapter 4. What we're focusing on now is the signs. So if you get an answer that's a decimal or a fraction, you did it wrong. What you want to be focusing on is the positives and negatives. So here, since I have x being multiplied by negative 6, I'm going to divide by negative 6. That gives me 1. This whole side, it all goes away except for the x. The other side, 24 divided by negative 6, because there's 1 negative sign, we are going to have negative 4 as our answer. All right, last 2 problems. We are going to divide by 9. A negative 81 divided by 9 is going to be 1 negative gives us a negative answer. So we have negative 9. Again, we're just counting the negatives. If there's the same, both positive, it's positive. If they're both negative, it's negative. If they're the opposite, 1 positive and 1 negative, like C and B and D, these last ones are all 1 negative. They're opposites of each other, so we will be having negative answers in this scenario. So for this last one, we have 104 divided by negative 13. Since there's 1 negative, the answer is negative, and 104 divided by 13 is -8. So let me see, where am I? There I am. So this is the last section. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Think about everything before the test. Have your notebook handy, have your calculator handy. It's an hour time limit, so you don't want to be spending your whole hour flipping through your notes. So make sure you just have them labeled so you can kind of jump to the right section if you need to, or don't use your notes if you don't need to, that's fine. But yeah, a lot of times what I hear when I do open note tests is that people spent a lot of time reviewing their notes during the test. So definitely flip through them before the test, get an idea of what you have where in your notebook, and then just kind of flip over to the particular example you need if you need it during the test. There's no formulas. We just have some rules like 2 multiplying same sign is going to be positive, dividing same sign is going to be positive, those kinds of rules, the addition and subtraction rules. But there's no formulas on this test. So it's just what's covered on chapters 1 through 3. And then, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, just go ahead to that test review center if you would like some extra practice or just kind of a sneak peek. It's not really a sneak peek of the test itself, but it's just review. I told the computer what topics are on the test, and the computer already knows what you are having an easy time with and what you're having a hard time with based on how you did your homework. So you'll get a personalized review for the test. Any questions? Just go ahead and shoot me an email, and I will see you in the next video.